Hi, folks. Beth,
Hi.
Jennifer, me, whatever.
Yeah, all here.
Oh, I forgot to put that up. Let's see. Is it that one? Yes. Okay, good. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Kim, good. Kim's here. Kim, do we still have openings for Susan Greening Davis and Beth Seal? I meant to email you earlier today and just didn't get to it, so let me know on that. So tonight, Beth, amazing stuff. I got to say, amazing printing stuff that Beth does, which she thinks is no big deal and it's really easy. But she's going to show us how she does it, and yeah, it's pretty cool stuff. So we're going to get a full-blown demonstration. Got a video and a dozen pictures of some of the stuff she's been doing lately. Really cool stuff. So that's tonight. Next Wednesday, there's not going to be any Stitch Hour or Wednesday podcast. It's going to take a week off. So no Stitch Hour, no Wednesday podcast. If I just had somebody cancel on us for tomorrow, which was going to be the next Sunday podcast, but I'm sure I'll have 3 or 4 lined up, but between now and then. So we'll probably have a Sunday podcast. But next Wednesday, neither of those. Going to just take a week off here and recharge a bit. So just don't expect that. Now Sunday is our big 500th anniversary show, 2 o'clock p.m. Eastern time, right here, same spot. 2 o'clock Eastern time. We have guests. It was going to be an hour, then it was going to be an hour and a half. Now it's going to be 2 hours. So bring extra beverage and extra stitching because we're gonna do it.
That's right. It'll be interesting too. We have great guests coming.
Yeah.
I mean,
2 hours plus, because who can stick to 10 minutes of talking?
Right. Yeah. We've told everybody.
Really.
We've told everybody 10 minutes. Yeah, that's going to happen. Sure.
yeah, right. No.
So we have Debbie Rowley, Kim Young, Ilka Cochran, Barbara Hudson, Karen Kluba, Jessica Grimm. Jessica Grimm's going to show us some stuff from medieval goldwork. Krista West, Kathy Ray, Sharon Bruce is going to show us some pictures of Mary Queen of Scots stitching from a weekend trip she did here just a couple weeks ago, and Natalie Dupuis. So all those people are going to join us.
And Cindy Baldwin.
Cindy Baldwin will be with us through the whole show, and we're being sponsored by Sassy Jack Stitchery and Cyber Pointers. So the show, 2 sponsors, and as we've mentioned, Kim at Sassy Jack Stitchery, 10 $50 gift cards that we'll be giving away during the show. And to that matter, that's why I had to put that down there, right there. You need to be eligible for those gift cards and a whole bunch of other stuff that we're giving away during the show. You need to enter ahead of time. So you need to send an email to Gary@WeTalkFiber.com. It says it right there. The subject is 500. You just put the number 500 in the subject line. I don't know why I'm showing you this as if it illustrates a subject line. I have no idea.
It helps.
Does that help? A visual?
Yeah.
Well, that's the subject line right there.
People.
And then down here, that's the subject line. Then down here is the body of the email. And that's where you put, see, it's more information here. See how that works? That's your name and address right there. So subject line, 500. Down here, body, lots of stuff. There's your visual. All right, those who learn visually, yeah. Okay, send that email. Do it now. If you haven't done it, do it now so you don't forget. But you got to be entered before midnight Central Time Saturday night, or you're not in the drawing. Okay, we just got to have some control because we want to announce the winners during the show. And if people are entering all the time, then it's not fair to everyone. So you got to enter it ahead of time to be in the thing. And so do that now. If you haven't done it, if you didn't do it last week or haven't done it as a result of either last Wednesday or this Wednesday's podcast, do it now. It's that right there. Just put the number 500 in, don't put anything else. And then in the subject line. So do that now and then send it in and then you'll be entered. Marga's taking them all and putting them in a spreadsheet so everybody will have an assigned number and then we'll do the drawings. So do that.
Thank you, Marga.
Yeah, Marga's, yep, I love that kind of help because I hate filling out forms. I'm terrible at it. Now, did we get an answer from Kim? We do have openings for Susan. Yes, okay. So we've talked about this a couple of times. there are still openings now at Sassy Jack's for Petite Dutch Dalliance with Susan Greening Davis, and that's June 3 and 4, and that's that sampler. Oh, I wish I had a picture of it. That's that sampler,
know.
and yeah, check that out. You gotta get in on that, and you gotta get that sampler. That is very cool. So Petite Dutch
And the
Dalliance.
price is very reasonable. I looked it up.
Shall I ask the question, or you looked it up
What, did I
and it
sign
is
up?
how much?
170 for the class, which is nothing
that's
for
excellent.
2 or 3 days of classes, 2 meals.
That's
You have to pay
excellent.
for your own accommodations, but still, that's nothing. Nothing.
Yeah. So that's June 3 and 4. So call Kim. Just call Kim at the shop. Call her at the shop and get on the list. There's still openings there. And then August 5 and 6, Beth Seal, Summer House Stitch Works, Dance of the Wildflowers is that class. Both of those live classes at a hotel or whatever it was nearby Sassy Jack's. So get in on that. There's still openings. Let's fill them up. Plenty of time to do both of those, and excellent road trip. Also on June 22nd, the third Wednesday I think it is of June. Yeah, June 22nd will be the third Wednesday of June, right? Yeah, that's how that works.
Yes.
We're going to start with Gayanne Rogers a project that is very cool. It's just a little 7.5. Why am I showing with the fingers thing? Jeez. A little 7.5 inch or so square piece that Gayanne has designed, where everybody stitches the center the same way, and then she has 3 or 4 different ways to stitch the outer quadrants. Those, okay? And then we're working with Kathy Ray on this at Needle in a Haystack, and Kathy has put together 14 colorways. 14 colorways. So you're going to be able to play with colors, pick out a colorway you like, and then stitch this thing. And this will be something we'll start on that Wednesday. And Gayanne is going to have a little preview on her website ahead of time, so you can buy the chart from her, and then you buy the colorways from Kathy Ray at Needle in a Haystack. So that whole thing. Then we're going to start on that Wednesday. Haven't worked out those details because Gayanne doesn't like to be on camera, so we got to work something out there. But
we're gonna start in that. We're gonna look through the chart.
Talk
We're not
about it.
having materials yet.
Right, and explain and everything. So then that'll be your chance to then order, and then we'll have other shows after that where we go through the process and talk about them. So that's coming up in June, and more details to follow on that. But just put that in your mind as something that goes on. So Sassy Jack Stitchery, 2 workshops coming up. Call Kim and sign up for those, and then watch when we get back on Wednesday, the second Wednesday of June. We'll have more detail on all of that with Gayanne Rogers. It's very cool little design she's done, and it's a real excellent opportunity to learn and experience changing a design. So you get a design, and then you have some variation, but you can do it very safely, so you don't have to freak out.
And then same with learning color theory, because she'll teach us how to, well, you don't like this color next to whatever you're using, maybe you change that a little bit too. So that's always fun.
Yeah. So those 2 things coming up, 2 big things coming up, the Sassy Jacks workshops, and then the thing with Gayanne Rogers. And it looks like they had a great time with Jeanette Douglas at Sassy Jacks this past weekend. Or is that was last weekend, right? Yeah, it was. Yeah. I saw some pictures, and it's like, oh man, I want to be there, because that's another cool design. So
So Anne Marie asked about, she already sent an email with the 500 show, so she does not enter again, only the
correct.
one time.
Yeah, please just enter once, please.
Okay.
Just enter once.
She's just double checking, because she's like, do I need to do it again?
Nope. If you've entered, you're done. That's why. Do it right now. Just take a moment, send an email right now, and then you can forget about it, and then you'll be entered. And you don't have to be there. You don't have to watch the show live. Of course, we'd love to have you watch the show live, because it's going to be fun. So please join us for that. But if you can't, Sunday afternoon, Memorial Day weekend, if you can't do it, you're still eligible for the prizes. So Yes. Nobody misses out. Okay, that's it. All right, that's
Woohoo!
it. So the email, I'm going to take this off the screen now. The email is down there to get in the prize drawing. There's no drawing tonight, no regular drawing tonight. I'm saving that stuff. I have several Avlia kits that we're going to give away on Sunday in addition to a whole bunch of other things, but I'm saving them for Sunday. So no drawing tonight, but right there, get that in, get in so you don't miss out. I'm going to take that down because then we're going to go through this thing. So what we'll do is Beth just kind of give us a little background, and then we'll run this movie, and then we'll go through the movie like we did with Nancy last week, and then we'll look at the pictures. So kind of just give us a background of what we're doing here.
Okay, so this is jelly printing or gelatin printing, and it originated, I think people were using, like the gelatin you used to use for, comes in packets, and I'm going to use my hands too. And you mix it up and you'd make a plate with it, really heavy like Jello, and then they'd use it for printing, but that would break apart. So people, manufacturers got onto that and started making these jelly plates. And so it's a mono printing, um, something you do mono printing. This is the jelly plate that I have. So what it means, mono printing means you have only one print. You can't, mono meaning one.
Got it.
You can get two images sometimes, but the second one or any other ones you pull after are very light and a little bit different. So it's just a way to make a very clean, crisp printing. And I do a lot with paper on it because it's fun to do. You don't know exactly what'll come out anytime you do it, but I also use it for fabric printing because you get fabulous results, and that's what I'm going to do on the video. But it's a great way to play with paint and materials, and you get just really interesting results. And there's a gal online, and this is why I started doing this over May. She had a May challenge where it was called, I think her name is Birgit Koopson, Birgit She's from the Netherlands, and she does a lot of jelly printing. And she had this challenge that one day, every day during the month of May, you were supposed to do a jelly print. And I said, I have nothing better to do in the month of May. So I started, I decided, oh, why not? So I did all these jelly prints and to post on Instagram. So if you go on Instagram, that's where I'm posting it.
You're doing on paper or cloth or both?
I did most of them on paper, and I did them on these little tags, the manila tags, because that's getting blown out.
Because they're firm and
they're firm, they're inexpensive. I use them in my art journal all the time.
Oh, don't start locking up. Beth, no. Oh no.
Can you hear me, Gary?
Now you're back.
Oh no.
Yeah, no, something with the signal. Now you're all pixelated. Oh no.
Uh-oh.
I'm gonna zap you and call back.
Hmm.
I'm gonna zap you and call back. Can you hear me? Oh, there she went. I didn't even zap her. Beth will be back momentarily.
Yeah, she might have taken herself out, and then.
And now Beth is joining us from northwestern Illinois. There's Beth. Hi, Beth.
It was raining today.
Oh,
there's someone in the net. But anyway,
okay.
So I use paper.
So you use those paper cards now, but then to the question, then can you use cloth? Because then I'm thinking, could you print that on cloth and then could you stitch on it and embellish a design? There we have it.
Yes.
Ooh, pretty.
And I use fabric medium, so that way it's nice and soft. In fact, I think it was the year of COVID.
Oh yeah.
I did this.
Okay.
Cool. So that's washable then, since you use fabric paint?
Yes, very washable and very stitch through. So
Nice. Oh, that'd be fun.
it's soft enough that you can stitch through it. My favorite is the one that's, I think I sent Gary a photo of it, but this one,
Yeah.
Cool.
which is
Could
Because you
do
several
some
layers.
interesting stitching and make a pillow or something.
right. Because yeah, you can see
Or
immediately
framing.
how you could play with that just with thread, just kind of a free form thing. Yeah.
Right, and if you look closely, there's leaf patterns. So if I went and stitched
Yeah.
up the leaves,
Yep.
and then, it would just, yeah, all sorts of possibilities. And even the blank ones down here, I thought it would be fun to fill in those spaces with stitching.
Right.
Yeah, for sure.
So, so that's what I like about this technique. It gives you fabulous results. The only thing is you do have to do a minimum amount of thinking. So you have to think a little bit about color theory. So if I took the yellow and mixed it with the purple, I would get brown on my jelly plate, if you totally mixed it in. So you have to make sure you keep your colors separated if they're complementary, which means across the color wheel from each other. I tend to
Right.
use analogous colors because I know that no matter what, I'm not going to get mud.
Right. So what kind of
You
fabric
know,
did you do this on?
it's this is feels like it's the prepared for dyeing Kona, but I've
Oh,
used
okay.
muslin. I've used
So does Kona make
like
a
linen.
prepared for dyeing fabric then?
Mm-hmm.
A
And it's
cotton?
really nice fabric. Mm-hmm.
Because
100%
I've
cotton.
used, yeah, I've used it for quilting. I didn't know. So do you buy it at the regular, like where do you buy it?
Um, I normally buy a bolt from a quilt store because
Oh,
you always
okay.
need 25 yards of fabric
Well,
if you don't
yeah,
make
I mean,
quilts.
but you play with your stuff. So, okay.
Right.
I
But
didn't
it
know if
doesn't
they
need to be
sold it
that.
at Joann or if you have to go to a
They do.
quilt store. Or...
You
Oh,
do. You can
okay.
get it from Joann's. Joann sometimes has it. You have to watch for it. They don't always carry it,
Oh,
the white. But you can use, for this method, if you're using paint, which I use from these, it doesn't matter. You can use really ugly fabric and cover it and change the fabric.
right. But the
But
quality, I mean, you don't want crappy
mhm,
quality if you're going to stitch on it because some of those fabrics
no,
are very poor quality
right.
in the, so.
But the other thing we did, and I didn't show this, but it's okay. Let me pull this back. So
Ooh, I like that too.
this fabric. I soaked it in soda ash, and then we used dye thickener and our jelly plates with dyes. So it's very soft, and you have to. The thing is, you have to keep it wet for the dye to work because it's got to soak through the
Oh,
fibers.
Uh-huh.
Because we use Procyon dyes to do this. So, and this is just a stencil I had, a couple of stencils, and it was just obviously a scrap of paper, fabric, because it's not even cut square.
Right.
It was
yeah.
just the edge of something,
Something to play
What's
with.
and we
Yeah.
were just
soda ash and what does that do?
Yeah.
I mean, I've heard
soda
of soda
ash.
ash, but I've never. Yeah, what is
Okay,
it?
soda ash is a raises the pH so that the dye adheres to your fabric. If you don't put soda ash in, you just
Oh.
don't get the color of dye with the Procyon. Um, so yeah, so you need to use that. Some people use salt too to have the dye
Oh.
soak into their fabric, but we found we don't need it because um, the water we're using has been softened. There's a water softener at the library, and so it has
Oh.
enough salt in it, so it's fine. We don't It doesn't make any difference. We kind of experimented with that a little bit, but
Okay, so your
again,
water that you use, it depends. Makes a difference
so
too.
if your water is very hard, you probably want to add salt to your dyeing process because then
Oh.
the dye will grabs into the fabric better
Oh, okay.
if you're using Procyon or Dharma, which is the other big name, Prochem. So the difference between this and the paint is that this is the dye is really soft and it's a lot um, more pliable. because the dye soaks into the fabric and adheres to the fibers, where this is much more on the surface. It's a
Oh,
surface technique.
Okay,
right.
So you can
that's what I
tell.
was wondering about it. How much of it is embedded in the actual fiber. So this is okay. All right.
Right. So this is like if you've painted your house and you got paint on your shirt,
Right.
and there's those bits of paint on your shirt. That's what this is,
Oh, okay.
the paint. But the dye, which we really like using, but it's not as crisp of an image, um, soaks into the fabric.
Okay.
So it gives you a much softer hand.
Okay.
But using the same technique, just you're using dye that's been thickened.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
And
All right. All right.
so,
Let's watch the movie, and
okay.
so we'll watch it through. And Beth gives a narration. Beth gives a narration as we go through this, but then we'll go back and do it again and stop along the way so she can explain in more detail or answer any questions for how to do this. So here goes just straight through. It's just short. It's just a short.
All right, so this is my jelly plate. I use it for printing. It's this it's Jelly Arts. I think it's the name brand. This jelly plate. I have several sizes. This is my larger size. When I'm printing, I just mainly use plain old acrylic paints, different brands. I don't really care. I actually have some craft ones that I use. The other thing you need to keep in mind if you're printing is color theory, because if you mix a bunch of colors together, you will get mud, and not even pretty mud. So the other thing is I am mixing my acrylic paints up with fabric extender. It's called Fabric Medium. I use Liquitex. There's other brands you can find online. You mix it 1-to-1. I can't see it on this one. 1 part medium to 1 part paint. What it does is it makes the hand of the fabric, not in focus, the hand of the fabric so you can stitch through it. So I already mixed some. We'll see if I have enough to do a pull. I mixed these 3 colors. So the next thing I do is I spread it out. And I'm mixing it in a cup. Sometimes I don't even bother doing that. I just squirt paint on well, you'll see. Later I'll do this when I do it with just paper. See, this paint was a little thick, so I knew it needed to be mixed in. And I wanted to do a few pulls on fabric since we are fabric artists. The other thing I use is a brayer. You can see mine's pretty dirty. I am known as a dirty girl.
Sandy, yeah, it's hard to hear. I've got the volume all the way up. We're going to go back and talk about
No,
it,
I'm
so
not
just
cleaning
hang in
my
there.
brayer off between. That's how you know. And this is going to be really light, but I want it to be light because I am doing it on fabric. If you get too thick, then the fabric isn't soft. So a textile. What I'm using to print, make my printing with, I'm going to just use this lovely egg carton. And I cleaned it off. I punched it onto my fabric that's on the ground. Okay, so I need something else because that's kind of boring. I'm looking for, okay, this is one of my favorite things to use. This is packing paper.
Terrible noise.
You have to work fairly quickly, but not too quickly. You don't want it to dry. So if you live in a drier climate, you're in a little more hurry. Okay, this is something that I thought was cool. This was old. These were expired, very expired. So
They're medicine tablet things. Okay.
And jelly plates are fun because you're not really sure. You have an idea of what will come up, but it's kind of serendipitous. That was kind of fun, but not exactly what I wanted. I need something else. So I had this button set, and I'm going to see if I can get a, that's better. I like circles. I like stitching circles, especially if I'm doing something more freeform. And I'm trying to go off the edge a little. Right, I think that's going to have to be good enough. So, this is just plain cotton fabric. Better if I cut the strings off of it. And then you just carefully lay it on top. Now, this is a piece of deli paper. I don't know if you can still get it. I have tons of it in my that I use, and it's just because it'll soak through. Can you see it soaking through? So that's I want to get a good print, so I'm pressing it down all over. And here, let's pull it up. And there you go. Now, I'll let this dry, but I still have paint on my brayer and on here. So I just want to kind of use it. And so I always do 2 pulls. Just taking another piece of fabric, and I didn't use. It is better, especially if it's especially juicy, if you use a piece of paper. But as you can see, I could care less. Now, I really like this one. Don't ask me why. I know I can add another layer to that. See the circle.
Okay. All right, so that's,
All right.
all right, so let's go back now, and then you can talk us through it. Here, that'll give you a head rush right there. There you go.
Now, wax paper,
Right.
wax paper and deli paper are the same thing, basically, right?
Right, except though
Kinda.
deli paper's a little thinner. Um,
Oh, okay. But
it,
I mean, you can use
you could use
wax
wax
paper.
paper, or
Yeah.
people
Okay.
people also use like freezer paper or something similar to that. And the
Right.
only
Right.
reason we use the deli paper when we do this is I didn't bring any upstairs with me, but my friends and I, when I'm making my journals, if I'm bookbinding my own books, I use the deli paper is strong enough to hold the book together. Um, and it's beautiful
Okay.
once you've painted on it and put a bunch of layers on it. So that's why I use
Nice.
deli paper.
Nice.
This is very, very strong, very strong. So,
Okay, so now, all right,
All right,
so
so
let's,
this is my jelly plate. I use
here,
it.
let me turn that volume down. So then the board you're doing it on, is this like a piece of glass, or what is this? A textured,
it is no, it's, I don't know what it actually is. It's like it's a plastic. Like I said, the original ones, we used to make our own jelly plates out of gelatin, out of like Jello, like what you eat, Jello. But we'd make it very thick. So if you've ever made those jigglers or anything where you add extra gelatin to your Jello so it doesn't melt, the minute you take it out of the refrigerator, that's what we would do. We would add extra gelatin to the jelly plate and it would solidify it. The problem is those would break apart after if you did a long day of printing. By the end of the day, the whole plate would be breaking apart, and people didn't like that. So Jelly Arts makes these plates, and they come in different sizes. I think they have a really huge one now. Like mine, this is like an 8 by 10, but there's a bigger one out now. Um, I don't even know how big it is, but it's like a plastic. It feels like kind of it gives a little, has a little give to it.
Okay.
Hmm.
And a texture so it'll hold the paint?
No, no texture.
Smooth,
It's
smooth.
smooth.
Okay.
So it releases the paint is
Oh,
what
okay.
you're trying to get it to do.
All right. Okay. And then I thought it was interesting. You're not picky at all about the paints you use.
No. In fact,
So if they're on sale, buy them, huh?
right. And so the only difference is I do prefer I'll use the craft paints if I'm like playing and I using on paper. But the pigments on the craft paint, there's less pigment in the craft paint. So if you're trying to get real intense colors, you're better off going up and using um, a known brand like the Liquitex. The Basics is a good student grade. I don't know what's over on the left. I think it might be Dick Blick's, but it has more pigment in it than your craft paint. And
Okay.
since I knew I was adding fabric extender to it, I was adding a medium to it. I wanted as much pigment in my paint as I could get.
Okay. Oh, for people who are if you're still struggling with the volume, I've turned the volume off on the video, and so it's just going to be us talking, so you shouldn't have any trouble hearing now. So then we just go and buy whatever colors we like or
Mm-hmm.
things that we want to mix
Right,
together and make a color, and then
right.
it's just playtime.
Playtime.
Yeah.
And yeah, and that's the fun thing about this is you really can mix colors and you can add layers. We can talk more about that later, but yeah, just whatever colors you like.
Okay.
Have you ever thought about doing this on linen or Ada and then stitching on
Yes, yes. In
it?
fact, I've got some linen. I'm really thinking about. We're gonna get together with some girlfriends, and I think I'm gonna do some. I'm gonna dye it first, and then I'm gonna do a layer on it, and then stitch on top of it.
Cool. Are you going to use that other that more, what did you call it, protein dye or
Procyon
that
dye.
other
We might
yeah.
with the dye thickener, quite
Mm-hmm.
possibly, and I might do this on it too, on some of the pieces too, where I'm using paint and or using fabric paint. One of my friends says she has some fabric paint she wants to use up. And again, if you buy
Oh,
just plain fabric paint, it's already got this fabric medium in it, so it's soft. It keeps your hand. It
okay.
keeps it so you can stitch through it without a problem.
Okay, so
Okay.
this stuff here is what makes
Hmm.
it so that the paint is not just a stiff thing that'll crack when you fold the fabric.
Right, right.
Okay, I get it.
Okay.
You can't, right. So can just use paint. But then my friend was doing that and she said she was ruining needles as she's trying to hand stitch through it.
Oh,
And that's when we decided, okay, it's worthwhile to go ahead and get the fabric medium because it makes it so your needle can go through it. It still has kind of like a feel to it, like because it is paint on top of your fabric, but not like if you just painted it. So
I get
yeah,
it. Yeah, I didn't understand what the role of that was, but now I see. So it makes it as close to a dye as you're going to get then,
right,
in
right,
terms of interacting with the fabric.
correct,
Okay,
correct.
all right. And this is all like obviously the acrylic paints are quite safe to work with, but so is this. So we're
Mhm.
not dealing with
Right,
chemicals where you got to wear a gas mask and rubber gloves or
right,
anything.
right. Now, so if I was
Judging by your
using
hands, no.
no, but okay, but if I was doing the dye and the dye thickener, the dye comes as a powder. So when we mix those dyes up, we put on a little mask
Okay,
before we open the container and put it in our, And the reason you do is there was a horror story. This one gal who was a famous artist was mixing her dyes without a mask on, and she sneezed and
Oh.
she inhaled all that dye into her
Ooh.
lungs. And I think she
Oh,
ended up having
no.
cancer. She's fine now, but it was one of those things. It was just like, okay, now we always wear a mask, because before we were kind of like cavalier, like, yeah, we should wear a mask, but
Oh.
let's just do this. But we're like, all it takes is one accident, and
Yeah.
they're fine particles. It's
Mm-hmm.
like the coal dust that the coal miners
Oh
used to
dear.
inhale.
And
Mm.
everybody
So,
has a mask now, right?
right.
Yeah.
You know, it's
Yes.
just something just because you just don't want to have that happen where you inhale all those dye particles. It's just not.
Yeah.
And once it's
Exactly.
mixed in, it's
Yeah.
perfectly safe. You mean you're not going to eat
Right.
it or anything, but it's safe. You get it on your hands. It's not going to hurt you. But yeah,
Right.
it's a horror story.
Oh boy. Ew.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Once it's in the lungs, kind of hard to get out. Yep.
Yes.
Oh boy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we mix that. Now the paint here, I was surprised at how little paint you have.
I know. I was
Right.
thinking the same thing.
Right. So it's a 1-to-1 ratio of dye the fabric medium to paint, and I don't need a lot. But remember, I knew I was doing it on fabric. So if I was doing on paper, I add more paint to my jelly plate. But because I'm using fabric and I want a really light coat on top, I used very little paint.
Okay.
But that's from experimenting. I mean, because that one piece I showed you before, and it's got the 4 green. There's one green piece, and I used the fabric medium on it, but I used a lot of paint on my first pull, and you can feel that paint on there.
Oh, stiff, huh?
It is. It's not terrible. It's not cracking or anything, but and it looks pretty, and I'll probably just use it as it is, but it's less paint. You still get really great results.
Okay. And so this whole paint thing, obviously very uh, unsophisticated, if I can use that word. Just paper cups, put some in, mix it with a
Right.
with
Mhm.
a tongue depressor or a popsicle stick, and
Right. And away you go. Away you go. And like even I said, most of the time, I don't even bother doing that. I'll just put some paint on my plate, put about an equal amount of fabric medium on it, and mix it literally on the plate.
okay.
Um,
So artist palette style, just
right. Just
yeah,
go.
huh?
Just go.
Okay. Yeah, I thought you'd be pouring a big wad of paint on, but clearly not.
No.
Yeah.
No.
And so then yeah.
And I'm just putting it on, and again, I just put it in a stripes. But you could again with the brayer, I could have blended it more. I
Mm-hmm.
could have made it more evenly spread across the plate and made the colors blend in more. I just I was trying to work quickly because I didn't have that much paint on it, and it will dry on your plate.
Yeah. Okay, so and that's something you pointed out, that's something that you need to pay attention to, is how quickly you work depending on the humidity in the air, and if you're in Arizona or
Right.
Illinois, it can dry fairly
Right.
fast for you.
Right. And some people even because they do a lot of it, um, there's special paints that are more open. They're called open paints. They're more expensive, but they have a longer drying time, so they don't dry so quickly when you're using them.
Okay.
And some printers prefer those. I don't do enough of it to bother.
Yeah.
I just know I have a limited time,
Okay.
so
So get it down and move on.
I get it down and start moving.
Now, I was intrigued that you don't seem to be at all concerned about what's on the brayer. It's just mixing it
No,
together. Because I was expecting you to wash it off between colors, but no, you just go for it.
no, no. So again, and that's because I'm using colors that would mix together. I've got a blue, a magenta, and a purple. Well, those three colors are next to each other on the color wheel. So even if I mix them so they were totally mixed up together, it's still going to be a nice color. Whereas if, let's say I wanted to add yellow, I could add yellow. I've added yellow to the purple, just kept them a little bit separated. Where they hit, they would have been brown
Mm-hmm.
or kind of muddy. But as long as I kept them separated, they would have been fine on the plate. And some people do that. You know, you just gotta, it's just a way to play. But I don't normally clean my brayer while I'm putting paint on it. I let them blend together because I like how that looks. I want
Okay.
the little bit of blended.
Okay.
But you
Now,
could put them on all separate and keep them separate. And
Right,
put
right. So
lots.
you
I
could have
mean, this is
stripes
just
or blocks of
yeah,
color.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Right,
This is just what you did this time.
right.
thank you, Jennifer. I was not getting that. Okay. All right. Yeah, because when you put those three colors down, then I expected you to do something that kept them separate, and then I was really surprised that you effectively just blended them in and had a gradient across the plate.
Right. But
Okay,
that's just kind of what I was doing,
so I
what I
could
was
put
looking at.
I could put artist tape on there and keep them very separate and stripy and do all kinds of things like that.
Yes, yes, and a totally different effect. And a lot of people, there's other, there's all sorts of things you can do with this plate. This is just a basic play time.
Yeah. Okay. All right. And by yeah, so I can see how the color theory comes into play, because yeah, when you mix these, you know you're going to get some pleasing colors as opposed to, like you said, mud. But
Hmm.
I bet you learn that quickly as you're
Right,
starting out.
right,
Yeah.
right, right.
Okay.
And then
Go ahead.
so if again, some people when they're doing this, like I blended I wanted my colors to kind of blend where they hit. But like we were saying, you could keep them totally separate. And then some people would have that all blended together where it was one, like a one color, one tone. So I kind of try to keep them blocky. So I'm looking at my print, and there's three definitive colors on there, but it blends in certain areas where they touched, and I like that effect.
Yeah. Okay. And then you get your paint spread out, and now I know the things you've shipped me in the mail, why they have paint on them.
Because you mean well, and I used to
No,
always
I'm just kidding.
decorate my packages.
She has never shipped me anything with paint on it, folks.
It's like I don't think I've shipped him anything with
No.
paint. But anyway, I thought I hadn't decorated any of his containers, but I used to. I used to always paint all the boxes, and I think it made my kids kind of embarrassed to get these funky boxes coming
Oh
to
man.
college. So it's like, oh,
Oh,
uh-oh,
goodness.
mom sent something. Well, it's got cookies in it, so it's okay. But anyway.
Right.
But this was interesting. The Birgit had said to use egg carton containers, and I thought egg carton. And she said now she goes and she looks at all the egg cartons to see if it's a different pattern than one
Oh.
she already has. And I thought, oh, I got to go look through my egg cartons and see if there's different patterns on my egg cartons. But
Hmm.
what it was just a different um, tool to use than I
Yeah.
normally have used on my jelly plate. But
And see,
anything that'll make a print.
I know I love this because now if you're doing this, everything you pick up, you're starting to look at, what kind of pattern
Oh.
will it make in the paint? Yeah.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. In fact, I pick up. It makes my husband like, "What are you doing? What are you picking up?" Like, "Oh, this will make a nice print." Like, okay, whatever.
Roll,
Roll his
roll,
eyes at
roll
me.
eyes, shake head. Yeah.
My wife's bringing home junk,
But
but
even
this made a really cool
like
print.
this, you're not even concerned about the paint that's on there. It's just
Yeah, that's dry, so it doesn't make any difference. It's not going to pull off.
yeah,
Not on that.
yeah.
So, and
So
then I was trying to Yeah, I know. And I was trying to, um, I've learned when you do images, you should try to make them go off the edge. And I wish I'd done a little bit more of that so that the circles kind of, so it looks like the pattern is more random if it
Uh-huh.
goes a little off the edges and it looks better design wise. I did,
Okay.
and I think that's why I used that, oh, packing,
Bubble wrap?
those bubble wrap around the edge because I wanted to kind of blur those lines a little bit.
Oh, okay.
So I don't have such a hard edge to my print.
Oh, yeah, I see. Because the way you have it now, it looks like this is intentionally framed series of
Hmm.
dots where you really want a
Right,
random look.
right. Much more random.
Okay. Huh.
Cool. So you could
So
like
yeah,
Oops.
with the paint,
Oh,
you could
nuts.
paint a whole background scene on, and then you could take different textures and different things, and you could actually draw some sort of a picture, and then put your
yes,
fabric or paper on, and have this
hmm, yes,
scene
and it,
or something.
yes, and people do that. They
Cool.
use,
Oh wow.
they take, so they paint on it, and just on the jelly plate, and then they make a monoprint of it. Um, and yeah, that's what it's for.
Oh. Mhm.
Hmm.
But yeah,
Cool. So you could do all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
right, right. The sky's the limit on what you can use this for.
Neat.
And I
You just have
noticed
to,
when you were using the bubble wrap, you were just touching it. You weren't trying to embed the bubbles in the paint that much.
no, no, because I didn't want to mess up the images I already had.
Okay.
I was just trying to go around and lightly tap it and pull it out.
Yeah. Okay.
But some of the other ones I've done that I think you have, I did do a harder push
Uh-huh.
onto the paint.
Okay. And then I love,
And this was
just whatever, it's just whatever.
right, right. So this was just some medicine. I was like, oh, these are really expired. So they were cool shape. They're little ovals, and I thought, oh yeah, they'll be
Mhm.
perfect. And then it was
So
just fun
this
to go and tap around.
Yeah. So this is why you want the plate to be a little bit pliable, because when you push this stuff in, you kind of want it to dent in
Right,
so that it
right,
makes, I mean, it's not going to be a huge indentation, but it helps put the pattern into the plate and into the paint.
right,
And
right.
then,
So
okay,
if if it was glass, we
it
used to
just wouldn't
use
do it that
glass too.
well.
It okay.
Yeah.
So for some reason the glass is um, it's got that slickness, and so it was harder to get an image on them to make the
Right.
monoprint because
Yeah,
we
because it
tried
doesn't
everything
give
before
and it
we
doesn't
bought.
accept something.
Right, and then when you put the fabric down on it, again, it has that give to release the paint, which is
Mm-hmm.
what you're trying to get.
Yeah.
Get.
Right. Yeah, because if you try, like, if there's something on glass, you try to make an image in, it won't take as well because it doesn't squish in.
Right,
So this
and this was my
squishes in a smidge.
right,
Yeah,
right.
okay.
It has that give,
Yeah.
and these buttons were
So you have
fun.
to be
I
careful not to gouge it. If you're using something sharp, you have to be careful not to scratch it.
yes, yes. You don't want to put holes in your jelly plate
Right. Because I
because
saw
then
you
that
use
kind
the
of ruins
screw
it.
one day. You had the screw
Yes,
out of the toolbox. So I was just
right,
thinking about that.
right. No, I was very careful when I used that screw because I thought, oh, I do not want to make a hole in my jelly plate.
Mm-hmm.
Because that was the problem with when we were making the gelatin ones, is that after a while they would disintegrate and anything you pushed in, it would just make the plate fall apart,
Oh.
which
Right.
gave it all
Okay.
its own cool effect. By the time we were done, we were getting really interesting prints on it. But
Yeah, for
it was
sure.
just literally
But then you had
falling
to make a
apart.
new plate.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Well, actually, what we used to do is kind of squish it back together and throw it in the refrigerator. We got quite a few uses out of those plates. But then,
Oh,
your
really?
husband would walk into the refrigerator and say, "What's molding in the refrigerator?" "Oh, that's my jelly plate. Time to throw that away."
That's my art.
"That's my art
Yeah,
project."
yeah. Leave me alone. It's my art.
Oh my
Yeah, right.
goodness.
It's like, yuck, yuck. Yeah,
I'm,
that's when we moved to the jelly.
and I'm sitting here thinking our daughter with her two sons, our two grandsons. I mean, they could have a blast just doing
Yeah.
this kind of thing
This
too.
this is we used to do this at the library with the kids. And they're, everyone's really hesitant when they first start because you're like, oh, I'm going to make a mistake. But then after a while, you get started and you just can't stop because you start putting paint down, doing image, pressing in it, changing colors, and it dries because you're using a thin layer of paint. It's easy to put layers on, and then you can get really creative with those layers.
Hmm.
So kids love
Cool.
doing this. Kids, this is a fun project to do with kids over the
Oh,
summer.
neat.
Yeah.
Yeah, Sandy
And
says you can do like burlap and leaves with veins. Have you ever done leaves and stuff? And
yeah, that's what the one with that was green. That was real leaves.
oh, right. Oh yeah.
And
Okay.
yeah, and then I have some that I used autumn. I call them autumn joy, but it was the seed pods from that.
Yes.
It was still in my
Sedum, the
garden.
big
I had
sedum.
Yes, and so I hadn't cut that off, so I went out and got those, and I think we're going to look at some images from that
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
later.
cool.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so absolutely.
Let's get this part wrapped up. So okay. So we get that, and now we're gonna put the cloth down, and so obviously there's nothing to the cloth. I mean, you don't have to iron it. You
No.
don't have to do anything. Just put it down.
Right. And some people will iron it if you want a really crisp image. So let's say you're doing, something where you want something very crisp. That's the only word I can think of. Then you probably want to iron it. You might even want to put it on freezer paper so it stays nice and flat. But I was doing
Oh
something more
yeah.
organic, so I just didn't care. So
Like iron
yeah,
it on
it just
freezer paper because it sticks on the shiny side,
right.
and then
And
you
then
have
that
good
gives you a
control.
harder surface to lay it down onto that
Right.
jelly plate.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
So, and then you press it down, and I use the deli paper between me and because the paint does seep through the fabric, and I didn't want it, you know, I didn't really care too much if it got too much on my hands, but it's nicer, and then you can really smooth it out too,
Hmm.
without like, oh gosh, I've got paint all over my hands.
Right.
Yeah.
You don't use a rolling pin or anything like that, or
No, I mean, I have used a clean brayer on top, but I thought, oh, I should have brought my other
okay.
brayer up that's clean, but I didn't, so I just
Okay.
pulled it.
So
Use the.
does if you squish it too hard with your hands, can you make other indentations that you didn't originally put in there?
Um,
You
I
know?
don't know. Maybe.
Huh.
I don't.
Yeah.
Probably.
Try
And
it.
and the
Try
other
it next
thing
time.
is,
Let us know.
okay, okay. Let you know. Oh, and the other thing is as you saw at the beginning, my plate isn't spotlessly clean, so the
Hmm.
paint that's already on there sometimes will come up. I try to clean it, like get all the excess paint off between printings. But if you're doing a long session where you're doing a lot of printing, a lot of painting, so the first image you put down, let's say you put more paint on and you do another pull, that image you did first time might ghost appear on that next print, which to me is
Oh,
totally cool. But it's
Yeah.
something you
yeah.
cannot, unless you totally clean your plate off every single time, which I never do. Um, you might get some of this, what's called ghosting, which is so fun.
Cool. Yeah.
All right. And then so you
So
do
the
that, and
first print,
yeah, you can see it coming through already.
right, right. And then you just pull it off gently and pull the paint up.
Yeah.
And then what's there, so that's really, really bright and vibrant. And if I had used an iron piece, it wouldn't have had all those other little lines in it. That's what those come from.
Mm-hmm.
Some of it might be from my brayer too.
Yeah.
But then I did that second pull, and I just was trying to clean my brayer off, so I cleaned it off on the because I knew there was still paint on there. And then I did that what's called the second pull with the ghost print, and those are some of my favorites, the ghosts.
Mm-hmm.
And it's called a ghost print because you can see it's kind of a very, very light image of what was still there.
Right.
Yeah, that's cool.
And see, this to me, this now starts to get into the overdyed linen area
Mm-hmm.
where you don't worry. It's just background. Yeah.
Right, right. And that's what will make that fun to use. And I was just pulling those out and looking at them and thinking, okay, I know what I can do with these.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
the fabric, it's fun it gives you a starting place to jump off from. It's just background. It is
Yeah.
just background.
All right, let's go to the pictures here. We're gonna run out of time, and then it's gonna be frustrating. So,
Oh dear, yeah.
it's just now these are all on these Manila cards here, but the colors you're getting are
Right,
just so vibrant.
right. So in that I used the yellow and the magenta, and I mixed the two, just blotches of it, pulled the fork through, and I knew I don't even have any of those tags left in that original because I knew that was just going to be a background. So I didn't really care. It was just the first day of pulling.
Mm-hmm. Now the fork you're using the fork on the jelly plate, and then
Right,
making the
right.
prints.
And I just kind of dragged it across the plate, making swirls, and then I just pushed down and made those prints, pulled those prints out. It's a fun way to get a first layer on if you're afraid to start. That's always a good first. I'm serious. I watched this one gal and she goes, "Okay, this is what we're going to do first. We're going to use a really expensive tool." And she pulled out a fork, a plastic fork, and and you're going to make really hard marks. And then she just went and drew lines, and she goes, "There you go." And now we're going to print. And she said she makes her people. She does a lot of printing, and she said do that first, and it takes all the fear away because it's like all of a sudden you see possibilities
Right. Yeah, and here you
just
have
by doing that.
three very distinctly different pieces.
Mm-hmm. Right, right, right. But again, and I just knew that they were just going to start. They were just being my background.
Yeah.
Right, and then Sandy asks if this type needs to be heat set with an iron.
No, not
No, okay.
not acrylic paint. It's not going to ever come out. Well, I guess if you washed and washed and washed it a lot, it might. But no, it does not. It needs
Right.
to be heat set. The dye with the dye thickener, after you've rinsed it, we do heat set it just to make sure. But
Oh, okay.
we generally just run it through the dryer after we've washed them, and that's good enough.
Oh, okay.
So,
Cool.
and then this was glue gun. I took a glue gun to a piece of cardboard and just made random marks, and then stamped it onto the um, onto the plate, and that's what that was. And then I did a pull.
I'll be
I
darned.
don't.
I have a question
So,
that just popped into my head.
hmm.
So I follow 123 Stitch because who doesn't? You know how on their sales it has those craft die things? Are those meant to be used for like this jelly printing? They always
Craft
have
dies.
these dies, and I'm like, what are these used for? I have no idea.
I
And
think I think those are more for stamping. Do they run them through
because they don't
those? I'm
look.
gonna do the crank thing,
Yeah, I
but I
don't
don't
know
know.
because they
I don't
have
know.
like raised edges. So I was like, oh, can you stamp them on your jelly thing and then?
Probably there's probably
Oh,
something you could do with them. And then we use
yeah.
stencils too, store-bought stencils. That's what I used
Okay.
with the dye thickeners, and I like those. I have quite a collection.
Like stencils from like toll painting and
Right,
those
right.
kinds of things, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And they work
Okay,
really nice for making images.
right. And then Dee wants to know how's your Instagram? You have like 2 Instagrams, don't you?
I just have one.
I thought I saw
What is
2
it?
different dates or something. It's like Beth and Ill and then a
2000
date
and
or something.
2003, I think. You're gonna make me think.
I know.
I, I
And
so and I couldn't.
I don't have something right now that I can switch over and look.
Oh,
Here
Beth
I'm.
and Ill 2003. It is
Okay, yeah.
2003. That's me. Beth
And
and
it's
Ill
just IL.
2003. IL, yeah, in
Yeah, like
Ill,
Illinois.
yes. And it's
Okay,
private, so you have to request
right.
you have to request. Sorry.
Otherwise, you have all those
My
weirdos
kids,
following
my
you. You have to block them all
yes,
the
and
time,
it's
like I do.
I know
Is
of
that?
those weirdos that you have to block. That's it.
That's it. Okay. There's her Instagram.
There we go.
Hmm.
Whoops. Sorry. There. I'll just put that up there.
Nice.
So that's her.
Yeah,
That's
because
Beth's Instagram.
you have at least one every day, and now you have 2 because you're doing the stitching and the printing,
See the
right?
stitching that was 2000. That was 100 days of chocolate, and I finished that one, so I haven't
Oh,
been
is that
posting
one
every
just
day on that
ended?
one.
Yeah, the chocolate was
That one
there every
just ended.
day.
Yes,
And I was
because
like,
chocolate's
chocolate.
important,
It
right?
is.
So this one was said make your own stencil was, and so all I did is cut a piece of cardstock up and just used it. And again, I just used that as a background. Um, but I see more potential for that. Um,
Mm-hmm.
that stencil is still living in my stash now because I can see. I think it'd make a nice if I did a repeat of it on a larger because I was using a smaller jelly plate. So if I did kind of a repeat of it,
Mm,
it would make a nice line around.
yeah.
And it was just, again, it was just to play. It was just to say, okay, this is the background. So this is maybe day 2 or 3. I don't remember. It wasn't that far along. Because as I went, I started adding more layers to them. Because that's what I like. I like layers. I like layers in my stitching. I like layers in my art journaling, which is why I like Gann Rogers things, because it's got layers of stitches.
Right.
See, this is the kind of thing where I start to see ways to stitch
Right. So
either
think
in.
of that on a piece of either on, oh, I lost you.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead. You're there.
Well, I just think that that's what I saw too. Once I started playing with it, I thought, oh, I could add a layer on top of something and use that as a line for stitching. I could just do part of it as a stem.
Yeah. Yeah. Possibilities. Yep.
So the one on the right is the first pull, and the one on the left is the one that's the ghost print.
What a difference.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yes. And you can see there's like some greenish, a different color of paint in there on the ghost print. So it started. I was I was in a printing session, and there was paint still left on my jelly plate, and the second ghost print pulled that up
Oh.
That's cool.
and removed the extra paint. Yeah, which was
So
really fun.
does it kind of the wet paint kind of will wet the paint underneath a little bit and reconstitute it and make it lift off?
I don't know. I'm
Because
trying.
how do
There's
you clean it to get it like clean so you make sure that that doesn't happen?
um I use a alcohol wipe, a baby wipe, and then
Oh,
after I've
okay.
wiped almost all the paint off of it, I might go take it to the sink and wash it with like a little bit of soap and water and then dry it.
Okay.
Yeah. They're pretty durable.
Nice.
But yeah. Okay, now this is with the fabric, the
Oh
autumn
yeah,
joy,
cool.
um,
Yep.
autumn
It looks
sedum.
like a
But yeah, that was
tree.
fun. I know.
That's
So the first
cool.
print is the one all the way over on the right. So I put the plant down, I put my paper on top, squished it, and that was the first print. The second print was the one in the middle. So I I must have pulled the plant off and then printed.
Yeah.
And then the third one, there was still paint, and I did the third ghost print.
Oh,
That is cool.
I love the middle one. The middle
So,
one's my favorite.
Yeah.
and my
Same.
regret is that it's not on fabric, that it's on a manila folder
Right.
thing.
Yep.
Do another
But
one.
I know, and except I did kill all my plants. I did make one, I did do one, and I was trying to find, I did one on fabric, and it came out, and I was looking for the ghost print, but I can't find it. I must have put it someplace safe.
Yeah.
But
So you
it
don't
came out
have any
pretty
more of
cool.
those plants?
Not until the
You don't have any
fall,
more autumn joy sedum? Oh yeah, you have to wait. Okay.
right? But it does make me. I'm going outside and I'm looking. I've got my irises are blooming, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
wondering if I wait till they, how they all dry up,
Yep.
and I use those. I wonder
Oh,
what they would do.
yep.
Try one fresh and then try one dried up, Do
Oh
both and
yeah,
see.
right, 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 definitely. And then even just any of the
Cool.
plants now, all the maple seed pods are falling. Okay,
Yeah.
put
Mm-hmm.
those down, but they have a texture on the wing part. So they're
Yeah.
gonna, again, when you pull them off, okay, so you put them down, you make a print, you pull the seed pods off, and you make another print, you're gonna get a totally different image. And
Ooh,
then I'll
you could
probably
set
get
them
a
up to look
third
like
ghost.
moths or butterflies
Yes, yes. So,
with the
oh,
wings.
I wonder if my husband would care if
It's
I
cool.
didn't help him with the chores tomorrow. We've got some
You can
rock to
manage.
move tomorrow.
He'll never
Oh.
notice. He'll never
He'll
notice.
never notice. But what did you mean he needed my help to move this rock? All right, and that's the egg carton, which was so
Uh-huh.
fun. And I think it's the one on well, the left might have been the first one, and the one on I don't remember now which one's which. But again, just it was just fun to pull those because
Yeah.
it makes such a neat circle.
And see, now this one really illustrates the value of not having a rigid pattern like you had on the cloth,
Right, right,
overlapping and random. It really has a
right.
whole much, a lot better, a whole much better. There you go. There's some language for you. Uh, has a much more pleasing presentation. Your eye
Right.
explores it. Yeah.
Right, right. And that was the problem with the fabric one. It's not random enough. So it doesn't go all the way out to the edge, but these kind of fall off the edge and aren't complete. So your eye, wanders through it, which
Yeah.
makes it a lot more fun as a design. And this was just so I printed with a foam stamp. I pressed the foam stamp onto the jelly plate after I put the pink paint down, then pulled the two on the right, and then the one on the left must be the ghost print.
Okay.
And see, you just don't know what's going to happen.
You get
And it's,
something different every time, don't you? Completely.
yes, and that's what makes this fun is that you're really not sure. And even if you have a bad print, and I had several bad prints that just didn't show anything, I was like, that's okay. I'll add something on top of it. It makes a nice textured background.
Yeah. Amazing.
These were fun. Now this is the big bubble wrap,
Uh-huh.
and I loved what came out from those. And so I probably printed something. It was already printed the yellow, and then I put blue down, and then I picked up the blue paint using the bubble wrap off of the jelly plate. When I printed it, that's what came up. Just fun.
Yep.
Huge amount of texture. Just don't know what you're going to get. And again, the buttons, I didn't realize how much fun those would be. And then some people online were making they were taking a bunch of different kinds of buttons, hot gluing them to a piece of cardboard and using that as to stamp onto the jelly plate.
That's cool.
And I thought, ooh, I have lots of my old grandma's buttons, that are just sitting in a jar, taking them and making a mixture of them, give you lots of different textures.
Yep.
And how fun would that be? Okay, to do that and then to make a fabric and then use that like
Yeah.
in a project bag. Because
Wasn't there
I'm sorry?
what wasn't there a cross stitch that was like that said buttons and it was supposed to be sewn around your button jar?
Maybe.
Some years ago. Or you could just go to one of your samplers and pick out an alphabet and you could do the buttons on the linen and then you could write buttons and then you can stitch it up and make it go around your button jar.
Right,
Cool.
right. That would be fun.
Yeah.
It's just a fun technique.
Yeah.
Now I'm gonna have to go play. All right, so this was
Now you're giving me
just
ideas.
I know. And so this was just they said something out of your toolbox, and so I thought, oh, what's in I went and found a screw off my husband's workbench. I said, okay, this will work, and I just lightly drew it across the jelly plate, making those blue waves. And that I thought, okay, wouldn't that be fun? Very light, doing really, really, really light on a piece of fabric, and then being able to stitch on that. I just think that would be a neat background for something.
Yep.
Ooh, maybe one of those mermaids.
Oh yeah.
See, thoughts.
Yep.
Everybody's going to be
All right.
jelly printing their fabric now. It's going to be a thing.
So I know this is several layers. So I probably started with the yellow layer, and I put leaves down, and then it was probably a ghost print of the yellow layer. And then I pulled the leaves off and stamped them onto the fabric. That's like 4 layers of fabric of jelly plating at least on that one.
Oh, cool.
So it wasn't just. I think if you don't get what you like on the first time, you have to be patient and say, okay, I'm going to let it dry. I'm going to add another layer, look at it and say, okay, what can I add? So, and again, I'm watching my color palette. Starting with yellow, I added green, and then I did blue on top because I knew by then, I was like, oh, I want my leaves to pull, to really show. So I used a dark shade of blue on top of the lighter shades of the yellow and green, and they did pop more.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that makes the difference. So you have to think a little bit about how your layers are going down on your fabric or your on your paper.
Yeah.
But you can layer. It's easy to layer it.
Yeah.
Which makes it so much fun.
I think this is my favorite. This really has such a feel to it.
It does.
I like the
leaves. You like the leaves?
Mm-hmm. Very cool.
Yeah. And it was fun to make. And now that it's summer, and there are leaves out again, I can do this again. I can go play and make some more. And I know I've been wanting to make some bags, some tote bags out of some stitch projects that I have. And so I think what I'm going to do is make fabric that matches the projects that are already stitched,
Right.
so that
Oh, that's cool.
it totally is my own fabric that goes with this whole project bag,
Yeah.
which will make it a lot more fun.
Okay, is there one more? Yeah, there's one more.
And
Yeah, and
you
that
let
was
the
the
fabric dry between printing on this?
yes, I generally, but it dries fairly quickly.
Right.
Like so that one I think I had like two pieces of fabric going at a time, but it's a big piece, so I did 4 prints on it, and then I kept just moving it around. I'd let it dry, and then I do another print on a different piece of fabric, and then I came back and said, okay, I can add this to that, and kept going and adding the layers.
Right.
But it doesn't take long to dry, and even if it's a little wet, you can go with it as long as it's not like dripping
Yeah.
with paint, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, then you'll
Cool.
have issues.
Yeah. Okay, and then
Unless
this
you
is the
want to
last
have
one here.
issues.
Yep.
Right. So this one I just took the that's called sequin waste or punchella, and I had a little bit more paint left in those cups, so I spread it on my jelly plate with the fabric medium, and then I went and I put that down and I rollered over it with my brayer, and that's I made that piece of fabric that's underneath with that, just to add a little more texture to that one ghost printed one.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's got another layer on it, but I'm like, okay, I can add either stitching on top of this um, or add another layer of paint.
Right. But see,
But yeah,
this is where it's so fun to me. Now that one, like if you had a fainter background, then to have some embroidery of plants or ribbon embroidery or
mhm,
something,
right,
you could really have some fun with that.
right, right. And and in and of itself, though, because it is so dark, um, using it as part of a project bag where you have something that's got those greens and yellows that you've already stitched,
Yeah. Yep.
to add that you can say that's you made everything that's part of that,
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
right, but you're right, if it could just be a little bit fainter, you could add something on top of it
Yep. So
because it is
cool.
pretty bright. It is pretty bright.
And then the other thing is you can use anything. All these
Right,
just show you can just use anything
right. And
to
to get the images, to
yeah.
get you know to get to make a mark on
Hot
your
glue
jelly
gun.
plate.
I can't believe you just
Yeah, just use a hot glue gun on a piece of cardboard. Random, random. And the other thing I've used is the corrugated cardboard. You rip it off and there's those lines in there.
mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
That makes a great stamp.
Ah.
Oh yeah.
So it's, just random whatever you have around.
Yep. Oh man. All right, back on screen for everybody here. Yeah, that's so much fun.
Yeah, that
Yep.
was really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, all right, so help me if I use acrylic paint with the fabric
Medium.
medium, then I can easily stitch on that. So I don't have to mess with the powdered dyes and face masks and all that stuff. So I can get
Right.
cheaply and quickly with this thing, I can get something I could stitch on as a background or as a cloth that I might put an insert of a needlework piece in or whatever it might be.
Right.
And that works just fine. So anybody who's thinking, oh, I have to dye fabric. No, you don't have to do that.
No.
Yeah.
And I have a friend that she prefers to use the dye and the dye thickener, but she already has it. So it's kind of fun to use what you already have. But
Yeah.
I prefer the paint because I like the bolder, brighter. As you can see, like mine dropped. The Even though I used a really bright color, it's it's not as bright
Right.
as this.
Right. Yeah.
Right? Same color palette, but one is definitely brighter. And this is so accessible,
Right.
to use paint. Um, and we tried watering it down, but it's still, to get the hand, you need that fabric medium. And I bought cheap stuff. My daughter was doing it at the library for an art camp. And I said, okay, I'm going to buy you some cheap stuff to use because I knew how the kids would use it.
Yeah.
And, they, it's like I knew how that was going to go.
Yeah.
So, and it worked fine. It worked fine. And so you, you can just buy it online. It's not that expensive.
Right.
And any cheap, if you have craft paint you want to use, craft paint works. It works fine.
Mm-hmm.
It really does.
Man, I can see the grandsons having a great time on a table just playing. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I think the fun thing is if you use paper, you think, okay, what am I going to do with all this paper? But it makes fun cards.
Mm-hmm.
A wrapping paper. That's the other thing we've had the kids do is you get plain brown paper bags and you open them all the way up, and then you have them do the jelly plate on that brown paper, and then they wrap gifts with it.
Okay. Uh-huh.
Wrapping paper. So that works really
Cool
well.
idea.
So just ideas for, especially you got kids over the summer and you're like, oh, what am I going to do with them all summer?
Yeah.
And this is one thing. It's relatively,
Yep.
I wouldn't buy a jelly plate. I would make one, go buy some gelatin at the grocery store, not the Jello, the stuff with sugar in it, you're going to have a sticky mess, but the plain gelatin, and just look it up online. I'm sure there's recipes.
Right. And you just buy the jelly plates online?
I bought my jelly plate online, yeah. Or
Yeah.
or if you can get to Dick Blick's, Jerry's Art something carries them, I'm sure. Art supply stores.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow, that's very cool.
Lots of fun.
All right, we're gonna wrap
That's
up here,
awesome.
folks. So I put the thing up. Get your emails in so you're in the drawing for Sunday. That is fascinating stuff. Thanks, Beth. That was great. You've been putting up those pictures.
It's
I've been
fun.
wondering how it all got done. So, yep.
Yeah.
Excellent.
It's very
Playtime.
cool.
Playtime.
Yep. Excellent. All right, we're going to be out, folks. See you Sunday, 2 o'clock Eastern time right here for the 500th show. Thanks for joining us tonight. Thank you, Beth, that was a ton of fun. We're out of here. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.